Hello guys, a lot of talk lately about Britain giving the United States a huge anniversary coin. And at first glance, it sounds like one of those diplomatic gifts people smile about for a day and then forget. So, in this video, we're going to separate the headline from the meaning, and you are going to walk away understanding why this coin is not just a big piece of metal. It is a message, and once you see what is built into it, the whole thing gets a lot more interesting. Today is Sunday, May 3rd, in New York. Comment below what day and date you're watching from, because I always like seeing where everyone is watching these videos. And real quick, if you value this kind of breakdown, support the channel by subscribing and comment John A.G. Best below. That tells me you want original work, not the watered-down copycat stuff floating around. So, in case you missed it, the United Kingdom presented the United States with a custom commemorative coin for America's big independence anniversary. And that sentence is already kind of funny. Britain is basically saying, congratulations on leaving us, here is a gift. That is not something you see every day. But this was not a random souvenir. This was a large format, Royal Mint-made presentation piece, handed over during a major diplomatic moment as the United States moved closer to its semi-quincentennial celebration. And that word sounds complicated, but it just means the country is hitting the quarter-millennium mark from the Declaration of Independence. Now, why does that matter? Because countries do not spend this much attention on a gift like this unless they are trying to say something without saying it too loudly. A normal gift says, we showed up. A symbolic gift says, remember where we started and look at where we are now. That is the real story here. America and Britain did not begin as best friends. They began with a break. Then came war, resentment, rivalry, and another conflict a few decades later. But over time, that relationship turned into trade, defense cooperation, intelligence sharing, cultural exchange, and a level of familiarity that very few countries have with each other. So when Britain gives America a coin celebrating independence from Britain, it is not just polite diplomacy. It is history bending back on itself. And the coin itself is built around that idea. Based on public descriptions, this thing is around the size of a small plate and heavy enough that you are not casually passing it around a dinner table. It weighs roughly 250,000 troy ounces, which lines up with the anniversary theme. 1 ounce for each year is a simple concept, but sometimes simple symbolism works because everyone understands it immediately. Now, collectors are going to ask the first obvious question, what is it made of? And this is where things get a little messy. Early coverage highlighted the size, the design, and the diplomatic meaning, but the exact metal description was not always front and center. Later, public images and descriptions suggested silver with gold and bronze-toned details, or plating depending on how it was described. And for a coin audience, that is not a small footnote. That is one of the first things people want to know. Because if something is called a coin, and it is ceremonial, and it weighs that much, the composition changes how collectors think about it. Is it primarily silver? Is it a plated presentation object? Is it a bimetallic display piece? Those are different things. So, yes, I like the gesture, but I also think the metal details should have been clearer from the beginning. If you are announcing a major commemorative piece made by a major mint, just tell people exactly what it is. Do not make the audience play detective. But even with that question hanging out there, the design is where the story really starts to open up. The coin has 13 sides. Not a circle, not a normal metal shape, but 13 sides, pointing back to the original colonies. And that is a bold design choice because the shape itself reminds you of the separation. Britain did not hide the uncomfortable part. They turned it into the outline. Then you have the front side with King Charles III. That follows the British coinage tradition, where the monarch's portrait carries the identity of the issuing side. But around that portrait, the design reportedly uses leaves to represent the presidents of the United States and the British monarchs who have ruled since independence. So the front is not just a royal image, it is a conversation between two systems. One side is hereditary monarchy, the other side is elected leadership. Different traditions, different logic, different political structures. And yet the design places them together, not as enemies, but as parallel histories. That is smart. Then you turn it over and you get the American eagle in high relief. And this is probably the part most people will notice first because eagles always dominate a design when they are done with depth. High relief gives the image shadow, movement, and drama. It makes the bird feel less like a flat emblem and more like a national symbol rising out of the surface. But here is the counterpoint. High relief can be powerful, but it can also become too sculptural if the transitions are harsh. From the images available, I can understand both reactions. The eagle looks impressive, no doubt, but parts of the relief may look a little abrupt depending on the lighting. That does not ruin it. It just means the design is not automatically perfect because it is patriotic. And that is worth saying. A lot of anniversary pieces get overloaded. Too many symbols, too many names, too many patriotic cues, too many attempts to make every inch mean something. When that happens, the design can start feeling like a government committee squeezed into metal. So the question is not, does this coin have symbolism? Of course it does. The better question is, does the symbolism have room to breathe? In this case, I think it mostly does. The 13-sided shape gives it identity. The monarch gives it origin. The eagle gives it American force. The leaves give it political timeline. The inscriptions around the edge reportedly record leaders from both countries, which turns the rim into part of the story instead of just a border. That edge detail is actually one of the most interesting parts. Most casual viewers do not think about the edge of a coin. They look at the front, then the back, and that is it. But here the edge becomes the bridge. It carries the succession of leaders, which means the coin is asking you to think about time, continuity, and change. Presidents rotate, monarchs pass the crown, governments shift, but the relationship keeps going. That is the quiet message. And I think that is why the coin should not just disappear into some office. It should be displayed publicly. Put it somewhere people can actually see it. Put it in a museum context. Let students, collectors, veterans, history people, and everyday visitors stand in front of it and read what is on the edge. A diplomatic gift only reaches its full value when the public can connect with it. And there is a broader anniversary backdrop here that makes this even more relevant. The official America 250 effort is not just one event on July 4th. It includes block parties, storytelling projects, student programs, volunteer service, museum work, historic preservation, and public celebrations across the country. So this British coin lands inside a much bigger national memory campaign. It is one symbol among many, but it is a strong one. The United States Mint is also leaning into the anniversary with one-year-only coinage changes, special collectible products, dual-date designs, and Liberty Bell privy marks tied to the same milestone. That matters because it tells you the coin world is becoming one of the main places where this anniversary is being packaged, remembered, and sold. And that is both exciting and dangerous. Exciting because collectors love a real historical reason to buy. Dangerous because when a big anniversary arrives, the market gets flooded with everything from serious numismatic pieces to cheap novelty items. Some will be beautiful, some will be meaningful, some will be overpriced decorations wearing patriotic clothes. So if a smaller version of this British gift ever gets made, do not just jump because it has the anniversary on it. Ask who made it. Ask what the metal content is. Ask the mintage. Ask whether it is legal tender, a metal, or a privately sold collectible. Ask whether the premium makes sense once the celebration is over. That is how you keep the emotion from doing all the buying for you. Would I like to see a smaller silver version? Honestly, yes. A quarter-kilo style version could be very interesting if it preserved the 13-sided shape and the eagle relief. Even a more affordable proof metal could work if the design stayed respectful and did not get turned into gimmicky packaging, but the execution would matter a lot. What do you think? Would you buy a smaller version if the price and metal content made sense, or should this stay as a one-of-one diplomatic object? Drop that below because I think collectors are going to be split, and if you are successful, share your success story in the comments so others can stay motivated. There's another fresh angle here too. The Royal Mint has already been using British coinage to revisit the American Revolutionary War, including designs connected to George III and George Washington. Think about that for a second. British coinage is now commemorating the very era that led to the loss of the colonies. That is not just marketing. That is a country choosing to frame an old wound as shared history. That is a mature move. And it also shows why precious metals are still used for ceremonial memory. Paper announcements vanish, social media posts get buried, but metal lasts. Silver especially sits in this strange place between money, art, diplomacy, and memory. It is not always about melt value. Sometimes it is about permanence. There is also a lesson here for the way America remembers itself. Big anniversaries are never neutral. They become contests over symbols. Which stories get centered? Which heroes get named? Which wounds get softened? Which uncomfortable details get pushed to the side? That is why objects like this matter. They seem harmless, but they quietly choose a version of memory. And that is another reason the public display question matters. If the coin sits in a room with no explanation, people see a pretty object. If it is placed next to a thoughtful label, people see a complicated relationship. They see independence, monarchy, presidents, war, reconciliation, and the strange fact that two nations can fight over sovereignty and still end up calling each other close partners centuries later. The National Park Service is preparing its own anniversary work around historic places tied to the founding story, and that is exactly the kind of setting where this coin would make sense. Not because it belongs to one park specifically, but because it belongs to the larger conversation about how physical places and physical objects help people remember history. And compare this with ordinary merchandise. A $10 souvenir coin might be fun, but it usually does not carry institutional weight. This British presentation piece does, because it came through official hands, was made by a historic mint, and was timed to a state-level diplomatic moment. That combination gives it gravity. That is also why copycat or rushed anniversary collectibles should be treated carefully. When an anniversary becomes popular, sellers move fast. They know patriotic emotion can shorten people's judgment, so enjoy the moment, but keep the checklist: metal, maker, mintage, design quality, documentation, long-term desirability. That little checklist can save you from a lot of regret. And honestly, that is the part new collectors often learn too late. A real story can add value, but a weak product can still hide behind a strong story. Do not skip that distinction. Now, does that mean this coin is automatically a great investment? No, and that is an important distinction. A presentation coin like this is not the same thing as stacking generic silver rounds. Its value is not just ounces multiplied by spot price. It is provenance, history, scarcity, craftsmanship, and public importance layered on top of whatever metal is there. If it ever entered a market, which may never happen, the story would matter more than the scale. But as a public gift, the best outcome is not resale. The best outcome is preservation. And that brings us back to the main point. Why did Britain give America this coin? Because the gift says three things at once. It says we remember the conflict. It says we honor the anniversary. And it says the relationship today is larger than the argument that created it. That is the kind of symbolism that works because it does not erase the past. It admits the past and then shows what came after. The revolution still happened. The War of 1812 still happened. The distance was real. The conflict was real. But so was the rebuilding. So was the alliance. So was the long road from enemy to partner. And that is why I think the coin is more interesting than the headline. It is not just Britain giving America silver. It is Britain giving America a mirror made of history. Look at where you came from. Look at what we came through. Look at what survived. Now, I still want clearer composition details. I still want better close-up photos. I still want to know exactly where it will be displayed and whether the public will actually get to see it. And yes, I still want to know whether a collector version ever happens, because if it does, the conversation in the coin community will get very interesting very quickly. But for now, I think the gesture lands. It is thoughtful. It is symbolic. It is a little ironic in the best possible way. And it reminds us that sometimes a coin is not just a coin. Sometimes it is a whole diplomatic speech, only quieter, heavier, and a lot harder to throw away. Subscribe if you want more breakdowns like this, because we do not just look at the headline here. We take the object apart, look at the story inside it, and decide what actually matters. And remember, this is for education and discussion only. Do not treat any coin, bullion product, collectible, or market idea mentioned here as personal financial advice. Do your own research, understand what you are buying, and never let a beautiful story replace clear judgment.